Welcome, listeners. This is Right Here, Right Queer podcast. This is Sarah Wallace, and I am joined by R.K. Ashwick.
Hi.
Noah Hawthorne.
Hello.
And a special guest, Meg Hood, which you might know from Meg's Tea Room.
Hello.
Woo! Today we will be talking about queer cozy fantasy. Woo!
Woo, our favorite.
Now, for those of you who may not know, Meg has made a presence on social media as a cozy fantasy expert. So we are very excited to have her here to talk about cozy fantasy and specifically queer cozy fantasy. So, to start off with, there has been a rise in cozy fantasy in recent years. And Meg, why do you think there's been a rise in cozy fantasy in recent years?
Oh, man. Well, first off, I'm touched to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. I said at the beginning, I feel like I'm fangirling because I've read all of your work and all of your phenomenal authors and just additions to the cozy space. You're some of the first books, actually, that I read in cozy fantasy. So this is a delight to be here.
Cool.
Wow.
I love you guys. For as far as the genre and why, I think because it's all about, warmth and community and belonging.
Yep.
And I think right now, especially in this time, it really took a spike after COVID, which makes a lot of sense to me. And everyone was just looking for somewhere soft to land. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that that's where the rise has kind of sparked from.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that. Becca, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say definitely the state of the world, both during COVID and now. And I think it's also kind of a natural reaction to the previous trend of darker fantasy. So like pre-COVID, we were coming off the end of like Game of Thrones. And I think people were just kind of naturally gravitating away from grimdark. Yeah, I think that played a part in it.
That's so true.
Noah, what do you think?
Bouncing off of what you've already said, I think a lot of people really needed hope these past few years. So I think that a lot of people find that in cozy, and playing off of what Becca said, before I wrote my cozy books, I was writing a lot of dark fantasy, and I needed a break afterwards. So that was why I switched, and I think like a lot of people have that, not only with reading but writing, so there's more of that available as well.
Yeah, because you did that, and I think Jay Penner also did that, where she was writing a lot of like really dark stuff, and it was messing with her mental health, so she switched to cozy, and now she's like happier. So I think that's fascinating. I don't have a whole lot new to add because you guys already said it all, but I'm a big like old movie buff, and the 1930s, which was like a really dark time in US history in terms of finances and war and everything, saw a huge increase in fluffy light musicals in the film industry. So I think that historically when we are in like these really dark periods of time, we tend to gravitate towards lighter, softer media, which feels like that's what cozy is for us today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a really good point. I never thought about that. Can I ask too, Noah, when you switched from writing something darker to something lighter, did that impact your mental health? Like, I know what it's like as a reader, but how is it as a writer?
Yeah, it was much needed for my mental health, especially towards the end of the trilogy I was working on. I was in a really bad space. Had a lot of like trans rage, I was just really angry, and I put a lot in that into my writing, which was great, and it really helped, and it was really cathartic. And there is, even in the dark, there's got to be hope, because why else are you rooting for these characters? So, but it's just a different kind when you go to cozy, and that was cathartic too, and it's just a different way. It was like unlocking a different part of my brain. So after writing in that for a while, it does kind of feel good to go back and forth, because it's a different part of your heart that needs care.
That's really cool.
Yeah, because I imagine as an author, readers, we're spending 8 hours in your story, but you're spending months up to years working on these stories. So I can't imagine the toll it takes on your brain as you're working these things out.
Yeah, and I do like to read darker things, I really do enjoy it, but even with that, I need a break. And I just, like you say, it's a lot different to just read it and okay, you're done with it, but when you're writing it, yeah, and you're always constantly thinking about them, even if you're not actively writing.
So on the same note, queer stories have also been increasing on the market, which is fantastic. And they've been increasing in every genre. So we've got them in romance, and we've got them in like historicals and thrillers and horror, but also in cozy. And just wanted to see what our thoughts are on the overlap in appeal between cozy fantasy and queer fiction.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. One of the kind of foundational tropes of cozy fantasy is the found family of it all. You know, I feel like most and the majority of cozy fantasies have some bit of that to it. And I just think when it comes to like the queer experience, you know, the community has had to build their own found families, and cozy fantasy centers so beautifully around creating these safe, welcoming spaces, like a tea shop or a cottage or some type of adventuring, you know, party. So I think that it just deeply connects and resounds in that spirit. I also think that in traditional fantasy, and you guys tell me if this is wrong or what if you have a differing opinion, but in a lot of traditional fantasy, traditional queer characters are often placed in these tragic or marginalized roles. And I feel like cozy fantasy offers this space where we can just exist and love and thrive without this constant struggle. And I feel like readers want stories where they can simply just be, you know, without like, or the conflicts are, you know, opening a bakery, not surviving systemic oppression. Yeah, sometimes.
Yes.
Not that those themes are not, you know, prevalent in a lot of cozy fantasies. It's just doing it in a softer way. And I think that's really interesting just to do that, you know, right now.
Agreed.
No, I love that. I think from a writing perspective, cozy fantasy is very character focused. So it gives authors a chance to really dig into a character. And I think that just naturally includes their gender identity and their sexuality and any other part of that that the author like wants to explore. I think it's also, you know, cozy fantasy is intended to be comforting, and just given the state of the world, I think people with marginalized identities need comfort. And so it really just, I think, just naturally goes hand in hand.
100%.
I'm trying to think of a good way to put this, but I think especially right now, a lot of people are saying, heck you, I'm going to be happy, whether you like it or not. And how they're happy is changing a little bit, but I think everyone just wants their stories out. And I think a lot of the people that are saying that and thinking that right now are from the queer community. And you have all made really good points. You know, it's the found family. It's just things that we have to deal with all of the time. And sometimes you want to read about characters fighting, but we do a lot of fighting already. Sometimes we just need the slower end of that, and that's just as important and just as big of a sign of rebellion, I think, is our happiness.
And sometimes it's just nice, yeah, to see just a queer character just existing, not fighting, you know?
And I'm trying to think of anything new to add to that, because I agree with like the found family and the like character driven stories, and like cozy doesn't necessarily mean lower stakes, but like to your point, Meg, when I was writing Letters to Half Moon Street, part of the reason for making that one queer normative was that I wanted to give queer folks a Regency novel where the stakes weren't, if I get found out, I'll go to prison. It was like, oh no, if I don't get married, I will be a spinster. Like, I wanted the stakes to be like typical Regency stakes. And so that was why I did it the way I did it. And also to like add to what you're talking about with like traditional fantasy. Because I feel like a lot of traditional fantasy follows the like hero's journey, which to be fair, I'm not an expert in. But typically the hero's journey ends with the hero alone. And I feel like cozy fantasy kind of pushes away from that arc with like community, and like community is the key in the end with cozy fantasy. And I feel like because of that with the queer community, since that's what we crave and that's what we need and that's how we survive, we're kind of gravitating towards these softer stories where the end result is we're in a community together and no one has to go off by themselves.
Yes, I love that. The togetherness of it all. Ugh.
Okay, so we all love cozy fantasy. What do you want to see more of in queer cozy fantasy?
I would love to see some older representation. And we have some, but I would love one couple that is one of my favorite couples in cozy fantasy. I can't remember their names, dadgummit. But in Sengu Mandana's The Secret Society of Irregular Witches, there's an older couple throughout the story, and I adore them. It's Ken and some, I can't remember the other. The other one's very dramatic and lovely, and it's very funny.
Ian?
Yes.
The only reason I think it's Ian is because I kept picturing him as Ian McKellen.
No,
Yes.
me too.
Okay, that was the vibe. That was the vibe, 1,000%. Yes. Okay. So, but that couple in particular, I was delighted by the whole time. And again, they felt very safe and lovely and grounded. And so I would love to see more older not old, but elderly representation. I think that would be so fun.
Definitely agree.
For me, sorry, I'm listening to my cat as she wreaks havoc around my blanket fort. So we'll see how that goes.
Wait, describe the blanket fort. They don't know you're at a blanket fort right now.
Oh,
Only
that's
we
right.
do.
That's right. Okay, so in order to
Context.
block out my husband's work calls and traffic outside, I'm currently sitting not on my bed, but next to my bed, basically with a blanket draped over me and like a suitcase. And the cat is currently trying to get in. So I have already shown her a way in. She is choosing to Mission Impossible this and come in through like the top. So if you hear books falling, jewelry dishes falling, it's just my cat being Tom Cruise.
Sure.
So that's my day today. But in terms of what I would like to see more of in queer cozy fantasy, and this kind of goes along with what we were talking about in the last one, but like intersectionality of identities. Like people who write about different facets of queerness, neurodivergence, disabilities, because again, with the character focus of cozy fantasy, it's really cool to see an author kind of give a new perspective and see like, oh, hey, in this, bakery setting that you might be familiar with, here are some identities and experiences that you may not have considered. Here's how they play off each other. How do they impact the character's viewpoint? How do they handle relationships? So I don't know. I think whenever I pick up a book that has something that I'm unfamiliar with in that sphere, I just think it's really fun and I would like to see more of it. The caveat to that, though, is that I don't think the author has a responsibility to like teach the reader anything. It's truly just like, I would just like to see different like perspectives. That's all.
Do you have any books that you can think of off the top of your head, no pressure, but that represent that well, you think?
Yeah. So it's a book that isn't out yet, but I read it to blurb it. It's called Call Forth the Moonlight by Z.M. Celester. I think it's coming out in like a few months. So like, of course, there's a queer romance in it. It's all about baby Griffin, which is fantastic. But there's also just a lot of discussion about one of the characters' like anxiety and panic attacks, and then another character's gender presentation and how, he really enjoys presenting more feminine, but, how do other people perceive that and how do other people judge him for it? But, what makes him happy? What does he truly love? And then the other one that I just read, Looking for Love in All the Haunted Places by Claire Kahn. It's about a self-described ESP girly taking a job to live in a haunted house for a reality show, but the main character is demisexual. And so there is a, romance, and looking at the cover, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's a typical romance, but it's a little bit different because the main character really goes into detail about how she experiences attraction and also has multiple conversations with the male main character about that. And I think that's an experience that not a lot of people are used to in like paranormal romance spaces.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wrote them both down. Just adding to the stack. My gosh.
We're all just like, people existing, I want it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would also like to see more older people as the main characters, and especially like parents, married couples, or just pre-existing relationships and getting to see them change, as time or obstacles hit them. I think that would be really nice because some of us are older and have already found our happily ever after, but life is always still changing and throwing things at you, and I think you grow in relationships, and it would be nice to see that in books. Yeah, that's what I got.
I think Brenna Bailey writes older sapphic romance, right?
There's one I have on my list I haven't read yet. That's The Retirement of Edna Fisher.
Oh, yes, that's on my list. I really want to read that one.
Yeah, it's on mine too. She's like 80 years old and is the chosen one.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to read that one. It sounds so good. I think for me, two of my favorite subgenres are cozy fantasy and historical fantasy, and I'd really love more cozy historical fantasies out there. That's obviously what I delve into, but I'd love to see more of that, just because I love historical fiction and historical fantasy particularly, and I like soft stories so that'd probably be my answer. I have like a list of books that are both, but it's shorter than either of the other two lists are, so I'd like more melding.
Is there like a time period in history that you think would lend well to cozy fantasy?
I've seen a lot of Regency. That's probably the most common one. I don't know. There are lots of different historical periods that I'd like to read more of. Like, I'd love more like Edwardian period. I think that would be really fun to read or write in. I'd love more like 20th century historicals, like Cat Sebastian with magic types of books are things that I would love to read or write. So
Listen, I'm going as fast as I can, okay?
I can't wait for yours.
Tell me more.
I'm hurrying. It's set in 1930s, so I mean that's the time period I like is like the 10s, 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
I think it'd be. I don't think I've ever seen a cozy fantasy like 50s or 60s. That'd be pretty rad.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
It would be really rad. S.O. Callahan has one set in like the 1890s, which is a little bit outside of what we normally see. So that one was really good too. But
I feel like a cozy sci-fi would lend so well to the 50s and 60s.
oh my God, that'd be so fun.
That would be so interesting.
Oh my God, yes.
Someone out there, get on it.
Someone write that.
Yeah, someone.
One thing I would like to see more of in cozy fantasy is change it up with professions and places.
Yes, please.
I think there's so many nooks and crannies of our world that you could just write anything about. And I think back to what Becca said, like you could, like with a bakery, you can throw so many different types of characters into it. And I do want to read about all those different kinds of scenarios, but I would really like to see other kinds of things going on.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I was with Marinesse recently. My name is Marinesse. She described it as cozy fantasy is a lot of doing a capitalism. Because it's a lot of people just opening up things.
Oh my God, that's
yeah.
true.
It would be really great if we could. And there have been some, over the past year specifically, there's been a whole other range that has started to come out. But there's still, like, for some reason, this thing that's happening where we're duplicating a lot.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, it's the queer dream, isn't it? To open up a bookshop or a bakery.
Yeah.
It is the dream.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like doing a capitalism, but like with a supportive community and without the overt stress of bills. So it's,
Yes.
yeah, I guess it's,
Yeah.
And with magic.
yeah, and with magic. That's very important.
Very important.
What are some aspects of cozy fantasy you want to explore more in the future?
Okay, so for me, obviously not an author, but I am in the publishing industry now. So personally, when I'm looking for stories right now, I would love to see stories that are inspired by different cultural traditions more and more and more. Again, just diversifying even deeper, just drawing from, different indigenous and Latin American, African, Asian, different folklores. Because I would love to see like how found families and those soft magics weave into those cultures and those folklore moments. Again, the more rich we can make the genre, the better, especially cozy fantasy because of what it represents,
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to explore more sapphic books. So like I've got an idea in the works for that. I also want to play around, kind of like what Noah was saying with playing around with setting. So I've got I guess it's still a little capitalistic, which is really funny, but I've got a more contemporary idea in the works, which is kind of terrifying because I never write contemporary. I'm always like, yeah, if you put it in Sword and Sorcery, I don't have to deal with cell phones. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I mean, you could pull a Noah and do a fantasy world with cell phones.
That's true.
Yes, it makes it way easy.
It worked. It worked.
I think this one, the idea really lends itself to like actual contemporary, like at the very least, like 2011, 2012.
That's a very interesting time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still just a little intimidating because I have never done that before.
Oh, you could do it. You got this.
Yeah, and it's like historical almost, but not. Like it's contemporary, but like 10 plus years ago. Horrifying to think of.
Yeah, like I was, alive and aware during the time, of course, but I still will need to like do research and be like, wait, so like what was popular then? Like in the time period I'm looking at, like Instagram is really like taking off for the first time. It's like the first 1 or 2 years of Instagram's life. And so it's like, well, what were we posting about then? What was popular? What were people wearing? Like
Food,
what were the cultural trends? And it's just a little, I feel like I should remember it, but I don't.
That'll be fun. That's some fun research, actually, because you lived it. It's different,
Yeah, I love that. Noah, what about you?
Well, my next cozy book, I'm changing the setting up a bit, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's going to be different. And we're like, normally when I think of cozy, I think of like warm and bright and like sunset colors, but this is like a thunderstorm at night from the way it looks to the vibes in it. Like it's very cozy, but in a different way. And I think there's going to be a lot of like soul searching.
I'm into this.
You're good at that.
So I think that's where I'm at. Kind of what's beyond us and the universe, forces at play, just the big questions, I think is nice to get into, especially in the cozy books, because you can. There's more room for that. And especially if it affects the characters or they're wondering about it.
I love this.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm excited about that one. That's going to be fun. I think for me, I want to write more, like I made an effort with Metal and Mend and then with Fate and Human Relations to kind of feature characters like across the like queer identity spectrum. But I think one thing I haven't done as much as I'd like is write more disability rep, which takes a lot more like research and care because my disability experience is limited obviously to my own. So I'd want to be sensitive with it, but I definitely want to include more disability rep in my upcoming stories. I'd like to see more cozy fantasy with disability rep in general, and I'd like to contribute.
I love that.
We all love cozy fantasy, obviously. But any like palate cleansers when you're feeling burnt out with cozy fantasy, anything you reach for when you're not reaching for cozy?
Yeah, that was my entire last year. I was burnt out from cozies. And I read some good ones in the midst of the year, but I definitely threw in some others just to get me I needed a different world. I tend to go into like dark stories that are still warm. If we can mesh the two, I'm delighted. So, for example, Nettle and Bone is a really good example of that. It's darker. T. Kingfisher, I really love most of her work. The Ghosts of Rose Hill is one of my favorite stories. It's written in prose and it's just dark, but it's just, again, so warm, like River Enchanted. I really love the Gilded ones, which to me it's warm. It's really intense, but to me, An Ember in the Ashes, same. It's the found family piece to it, and so I tend to go opposite, but I still kind of seek out the tropes, like the found family tropes that I really love. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I read Nettle and Bone based on your recommendation, and it was so good. I loved it so much.
Isn't it so cool? It's such an original story.
For me, I think I still stay in the fantasy space. It's just maybe looking at higher stakes stuff. If you read a lot of low stakes stuff in a row, it can get a little bit monotonous. The one that comes to mind, and I don't know if I guess it's kind of by stakes, Piranesi.
Oh, yeah.
I really loved Piranesi. It was just very different from everything else I had been reading. The mystery of it was really cool. The setting was really cool. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one.
That's one that has been on my list for so long. I need to do it.
And it's not that long either.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Everyone talks about it.
I'll have to look that one up. I haven't even heard of that one.
When I'm not reading cozy fantasy, I really like historicals. I got really into KJ Charles, Cat Sebastian, that whole rabbit hole last year. I also really like murder mysteries and darker stories like that. Sherlock Holmes like characters trying to figure things out. I read a lot of those. I think when I've been reading a lot of cozy, what I really like to go for is a huge fantasy book with a bunch of really like ruffian, rascal, mischievous like characters, the big group.
Yeah.
The banter's good. I read The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman, and that surprised me and I loved it. I flew through it. It like turns fantasy on its head. Another one that did that was Kings of the Wild, Nicholas Eames.
Mike's taking notes.
I'm writing all of these down.
It was so good, and even though it's like a band of they're like a band of retired mercenaries coming out of retirement to help their friend find his kid. And it's like high stakes, but to me, I found it really cozy because there was a lot of character growth and healing and fixing old wounds and things like that. So yeah, those are the things I like.
That makes sense. I'm also, before I go into my answer, have you read Lavender House, that series, Lavender Mills series by Lev A.C. Rosen?
I have not.
I will admit, I started book one and it was during my slump last year, so I didn't finish it. But I've heard really good things about the series. But it's a queer detective, like private eye in like 1950 San Francisco, I think.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it sounds like right up your alley because it's historical and it's queer and it's a mystery. My friend described it as Knives Out, but queer.
Oh yeah, I need it then.
We're all like, yes.
Yeah.
Give it to me now.
Yeah, and it's like a series, and I think the author said that he doesn't know if he's going to be able to continue the series after this next book. So yeah, check it out so we can get him more books. And then for me, it's similar to you, Noah. I actually reach for historicals or historical fiction, kind of regardless of cozy factor. I've been reading a lot of Cat Sebastian lately. And I recently read, it was a nice change, is I read the first 2 books in the Murderbot Diaries, which I was spamming our Discord chats with reactions because it was so good.
It's so good.
They're like, who said this was cozy again?
I know.
It was you.
I know. I literally found Meg, I found your video reviewing it because everyone was like, I don't think that's cozy, Sarah. And I'm like, Meg said that it's sort of cozy. Here
It's
is the
sort
link.
of. I
Yes.
like I felt so bad. I ended up deleting I think some video I did because I was like I feel like I'm being misunderstood. Because to me it was cozy because I was so endeared and it was it was a heavy journey.
Yes.
But there's such a comfort character or it's such a comfort character.
Yes.
By the end of the story you're just so endeared to it. I don't know.
Yes, it is. And it had found family and it had like a character motivated, like character driven plot. And like I knew the main character was going to be okay because there's a whole bunch of books afterwards. So I was like, this is fine.
It's so sassy.
It's so sassy. And it was laugh out loud hilarious. Like I had to put the book down so I could laugh. Kind of funny. So those are, I don't usually reach for sci-fi, but that one kept showing up on lists. So I was like, gotta check this one out. But typically historical is what I reach for in between. And last but not least, what are some of our favorite queer cozy fantasy stories? And I'm going to preface this with typically in Right Here, Right Queer, it turns into the Spider-Man meme because we're all like, I like your books and I like your books. And so we can start off with everyone in the Right Here, Right Queer podcast crew. I think we could all unanimously agree all of our books are great. So Reed, S.O. Callahan, Noah Hawthorne, Sebastian, Nothwell, Tess Carletta, R.K. Ashwick, Sarah Wallace, and Carolina Cruz for some queer cozy fantasies. And beyond our own group, Meg, what are some queer cozy fantasies that you'd recommend?
Oh, man. Okay, beyond you guys. Let's see. I just finished the book Sword Crossed by Freya Marsk, and that was really good. It's a slow burn for sure. It's more, you just kind of settle into it for a while, and I wasn't sure for a bit there, but yeah, that was a really, really fun one. And it was, dueling and sword fighting. And yeah, I loved that. Silver in the Wood will always be in my top. Yeah, that one wrecked me for a while. Anytime I need to just really feel something, I think it's just the most beautiful imagery and just depth in that story.
Yes.
I also love A Psalm for the Wild Bill. Anything Becky Chambers, I tend to go for. F.T. Lukens, if I just want to giggle. I love F.T. Lukens. House of Frank was a beautiful one that came out last year. That was lovely. Yeah, and then on my list I have all of your stories. Oh, Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. And mainly because that couple is so grounded and strong throughout it. So you aren't anxious the whole time that they're going to break up. Their world's good, but the world around them is the one that's crumbling. And I thought that was really unique in a story. I hadn't seen that really in a fantasy before.
Yeah, agreed. And by the way, I'm sorry for taking out the "don't talk about us" thing.
No, you're good.
Obviously do that because I just feel like every time we're like, also, I like this. It's very funny.
I do though.
So, I know. Becca, do you have any recommendations for queer cozy fantasy?
Yes, I did surprisingly write down 2 books that are not from the Right Here Right Queer group. I already mentioned Looking for Love in All the Haunted Places by Claire Kahn. The other one I jotted down was Fronting Close to the Wind by Alexander Rowland. That one it's so funny. It's a pirate comedy. Please just read it. One of the big events is like a cake baking contest.
What?
And I just need everyone to read it.
Does it have a purple cover?
My God, yes.
It's like purple and green.
So it's like there's 2 different covers. I think
Okay.
the American one is like blue and red and yellow.
Okay, I have this saved, baby. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I need to, this one looks great. Okay, now I didn't know it was a pirate comedy.
Yeah,
Come on.
it is. Please read it.
I love anything by Carla Nicole. The Lauren Lust books by her are just really amazing. They're just really great. The characters get together in the first book, and then it's kind of different. Like, it's about them, but it's not. It, expands perspectives to include everyone in the friend group, which I really like, but it doesn't leave them behind. And I know what Sebastian is going to say, but I really... Oh, I can't. Okay, never mind. I can't talk about them.
You can recommend that. It wasn't like a rule you're not allowed to. I just wanted to make sure we all knew that we all love each other and each other's books.
Yes, we do all
so
love
that
each
no
other.
one felt slighted if they weren't recommended.
But I really like when the cozy is kind of darker or gothic. Sebastian does it really well, and so does Carolina Cruz. I just really like it when it's cozy, but the whole world is kind of dark and weird. Thornhedge
Me too.
by T. Kingfisher was really good,
Yeah.
and it had that same vibe. I also really liked Silver in the Wood. I just gave that to a friend of mine. And this one, I wouldn't say is cozy fantasy because it's really high stakes, but it's cozy to me on a reread, is A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. It's one of those books where not a lot happens, but when it does, plot-wise, it's like a lot. But it's very character-focused in characters like healing and learning to trust and love and finding their found family. So that's what I really liked about that one.
And that one is on my list. I'm really excited about that one. I did a horrible job preparing for this this conversation that I suggested because I didn't make any list of things. So I'm looking through my story graph reads. So I've only read one of the books in the series, so I'm going to clarify that. But Love and Magic by Colette Rivera is really cute, like fantasy, paranormal. Every book is queer. The first one's male-female, but both characters are bi, which is always fun. And they're really cute and funny, and I loved the characters. I'm excited to read the rest of the series. And I've read almost all the books, but S.O. Callahan has been telling me for years to read the Floss Magic Case series by Arden Powell, and I finally read most of it, and oh my god, it was cozy, historical fantasy, set in 1920s England, phenomenal, and I've read all but like 2 or 3 of the books, but they were a delight.
Yeah, those are really high on my list.
I have them loaded up, ready to go.
They're so good, and they're like funny.
There you go.
They're so good. Highly recommend. And I'll also say Gail Carriger because she was the first one who got me into cozy fantasy were her books. So her books are all a lot of fun. But also last year I got really into Olivia Atwater's Regency Fairy Tales series. So good. And it's not until the 3rd book that you get a queer story, but the whole series is good. But 3rd book is excellent and has a queer protagonist and highly recommend it. So more cozy historical fantasy. From me. And any final things to discuss before we wrap up this one? Any final thoughts on queer cozy fantasy?
It's great.
We love it.
You should read
It's
it.
great. Read more.
Full of vitamins and minerals.
Uh-huh.
Get your 5 daily servings.
Good for the soul. So, RK, we've already had this discussion, but this is just an open invitation. If you have anything in the works and you're looking for a publisher, for all 3 of you, this is an open invitation. If you feel like you would like to submit, I promise you it would be handled with so much love and joy. But that's just me being, that's a selfish thing. But yes, I would love, let's see, I would love to know what's the one you're working on right now that you're most excited by? Or is there an idea that you have that you haven't put to paper yet that you're like, you cannot get out of your head and you just maybe want to tease it?
Mine's difficult because I'm co-writing, so I can't fill too many beans without my co-author's permission. But I can say that right now we're working on a story that is a passion project of mine that I have had on my bucket list of things I wanted to write for like 10 years. And Shannon was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we started it last year, and I am so fucking excited for people to read the story.
Yeah.
Sarah, I will be interrogating you about this after the podcast.
Yes, I'm ready.
We want more information. Why did I ask this?
Which you won't get for like a year.
Dang
I'm so
it.
sorry. But
Oh.
it's coming.
It's like one of the hardest parts of being an author is knowing everything for like such a long time in advance.
I know. It's so hard. I'm really bad at keeping secrets. I don't know why I keep putting myself in this position.
Let's see. Okay, so I'm working on The Spirit's Curse right now, and that'll wrap up the Lute Song series. I'll be honest, that one has been very difficult to write, but I just got the illustrations in from my illustrator, who is a charcoal artist this time around, and I'm very excited about those. So that'll be cool. And then I am very excited. As soon as this book goes to my editor, I'm going to be hopping into A Draft for a Dragon, which is the last book in the SideQuest Rose series. That's with Ambrose and Eli. And I will say that, you know, and it's in the blurb, so like I'm really not spoiling anything, but Eli is working on his proposal to Ambrose. And I just get happy bubbles every time I think of it. It's going to be fantastic for me, at the very least, if not for other people reading. Hopefully for other people reading. But yeah, I'm really excited to dig into that.
Oh, you're going to have so much fun writing that. I can't wait.
will.
Speaking of side quest row, I gave Arrival of Most Vile to that same friend because she needed a good, cozy, wholesome book to bring her up right now.
It's
So
so
That's a
good.
good one.
yeah, and then I have a Captured Cauldron, but I haven't started that yet, so she can get it after.
Nice.
I'm currently working on The Voice of Wild Places, which is the queer historical fiction. And actually, Sarah introduced me to the term a fabulism, which is kind of like magical realism, but magical realism actually is a genre that is originated with Latin American authors.
I believe so, yeah. It typically tackles colonialism.
Yes, right. But so there's just some speculative elements to it. It's about two ex-best friends that get forced to go on an expedition together into Brazil to find a lost explorer or the city he was looking for. And I'm very excited with it. I am battling with it, but it is almost done.
It's going to be awesome.
Love that.
So many of my favorite things.
Yes, I can't wait, and I really love them, but I need to get them out of my life now and move on. And then it's the third Levina book, which is the Thunderstorm at Night deal, astrophysicist and a star, vampire, allergic to the only alternative to blood, so he's got to figure out what to do with his life.
Interesting.
That's my plans.
Oh, I love that. I have one more question. Before I give it, I'm going to do a little plug for my Cozy Fantasy Challenge, which is on Storygraph, where I've got like 20 prompts. Everyone in the Discord helped me come up with some of these prompts, but it's to encourage us all to read more diversely within the genre. So since we're talking about queer cozy stuff, there are a few prompts in there specifically about queer cozy fantasy. So throwing that in there, if you are listening to this and you want to read more, you can get some good bricks from there. And then I do have a final question for Meg, because you recently launched the cover reveal for your first book in your imprint.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So do you want to tell us about that? Thank you guys. So it's been wild. It's been a while just learning the back end of things, and the respect that I have for authors was already high. But watching Destin work through these edits, just the editing process alone, my heart was bleeding on the floor because what you guys have to go through. Woo, woof. But yeah, it's a cozy foodie fantasy. It's called Recipes for an Unexpected Afterlife. And it is about, an undead orc knight who has been forced into essentially just like fighting servitude, fighting slavery. He has to fight for this evil warlord through magic and in his whole past, and it's wrecked his world, and he was actually the one to take down the warlord in the end. And so he became this huge figure of peace, throughout the land. And it's time for him to retire. And in the process of retiring, he decides, he's got to find purpose and meaning in his life again. And so he decides to open a restaurant, which I know. But it was one of those things where the pitch did not get me at first, because I was like, it's just Legends of Lattes again. But then, it flips it on its head. It's really interesting what he did with it, because you think the rest of the book is going to be restaurant-centric and just finding his peace there. But along the way of building that restaurant, our orc meets a 9-year-old orphan named Astra, who rocks his world. And she has some interesting hidden powers as well. And she's also looking for family, just like he is, and looking to just find home. And they kind of butt up against each other a little bit, but in the end, it's a father-daughter story. It's really lovely. It's really lovely.
So cute.
That's so cool.
So I'm really, really proud of Destin. He's done incredible building this out, and it's been a really rewarding experience. I've loved every minute of it. It's been wild. And it's hard. I mean, gosh, for authors, again, major respect for you guys and what you have to craft and how it's an honor and it's a gift that you get to craft, but just the process of it is a bitch. Can I say bitch?
Yes.
Wow, it's really phenomenal what you guys do. It really is. So it's been really fun getting to see the back end of that, and then help put something out in the world that you helped birth. Like, that's crazy.
So cool. I'm so excited for that one.
Yeah, is there anything that's really surprised you about this whole process, like the behind the scenes part of it? Is there anything you just did not expect? Or
that's a great question. Honestly, even just the editing piece is what we just finalized, so that that piece and just understanding, what a dev edit is versus this kind, the copy edit, all the different styles of editing, the amount of passes, are that we go through and you go through in order to refine the story is pretty fascinating. And all the work that goes behind, the marketing piece, just marketing a book is blowing my mind. And just when it comes to being an indie author, again, the respect level is like, choom, because the amount of marketing you guys have to do on your own, you know what I mean? And figuring out, I can't imagine, but y'all are so good at it. You guys have figured it out so well. You're so good at it. I'm taking notes from everybody because, I'm having to learn how to now too. But yeah, it's a lot. You're not just an author. I think that was the biggest surprise is you're not just an author, which I knew that, generally, but just to see it in practice, it's like you have to be this, and this as well, to be an author.
It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to actually do it. And
yeah.
It's interesting because most of it have 9 to 5 type regular, not exciting jobs, or maybe they're exciting, but regular jobs. But the whole work-life balance, you clock out of work and then you work on writing stuff, and your weekends are writing stuff. And so it's one of my managers called my writing a side hustle, and I was like, no. But
I'm sorry,
not a side hustle, but. It was fine. I think he was trying to be supportive, but it was funny. But I feel like a side hustle still has the same idea of a beginning and end to it, whereas I feel like being an indie author and being your own publisher, you don't really have that clocking in, clocking out, because you're constantly thinking of stuff. So it's
really beautiful writing as a career to some extent, because it's it really is such a passion-led thing. I've never experienced something that takes that much. You gotta really love it. You really do. And when you do, and you know it, we as readers know it, and that's what makes it so special. And that's what makes you guys so special. You can feel it in all of your stories. It's really, really cool.
Thank you.
Well, so we'll go around, and if you guys want to say where people can find you. So Meg, where can our listeners find you?
I'm on TikTok, as long as TikTok is alive, Meg's Tea Room. Same on YouTube. It's Meg's, not on YouTube, but on Instagram, it's megs.t.room, because someone has the Meg's Tea Room handle. But someday, I'm going to see if I can purchase it from them. And then let's see, YouTube, as of literally in 1 hour, I will be posting my first YouTube video.
Oh, congrats.
So we'll be there at Meg's Tea Room too, which is super exciting. Then you can also follow along the whole publishing process in my binderybooks.com. If you go to binderybooks.com, you can join me in the whole publishing piece, which is really fun.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so fun.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This is anytime. This is a delight. I love spending time with you guys.
This was so fun. Becca, where can readers or listeners find you?
Yes, I can be found on Instagram at rkashwickbooks or at rkashwick.com.
And Noah?
I can be found on Instagram, Tumblr, Blue Sky, YouTube, and there's also my website, which will give you the map to where you need to go. That's NESHAMA publishing.com.
And I am Sarah Wallace, and you can find me on Instagram at Sarah Wallace, sarah.wallace.writer, and you can find me online at sarahwallacewriter.com. Thank you all for listening. Thank you everyone for joining. This has been such a fun conversation. And we will all see you later.
It was so great chatting with you. Thank you.
You as well.